Hi everyone, today's April 18th, 2020, and this is the Duel Assessment, your podcast for Yu-Gi-Oh! Duel Links. My name is Green Ranger. The end of the Kaiba Cup, so we've reached that point where it's typically nothing to do for a little bit. I mean, there are some PvE events going on, but not really a big week in terms of content. Not one of those big weeks where they give us a million cards or whatever, but there are some new cards this week. We're going to go over the Kaiba Cup. The top 10 decks were submitted to Duel Links Meta, so we'll go over those. Very interesting what transpired. Besides, expecting the meta decks to show up, there were some very interesting developments, and it's cool to study it all and use that information gleaned from those decks to improve your own decks in ranked play or other tournaments. We'll talk about some tournament stuff. Tag Duel Tournament's the main PvE event this week. 2 new cards and 2 not bad cards. They usually give us pretty bad cards for these free events, but these are really decent cards. There's also 2 very exciting cards from the card trader, and they play off a whole new mechanic in Duel Links. We'll check out what that's all about. 1 new card from Duel Quest and Doug Casual Deck of the Week. Doug Dimmaduel has Invoked Magician Girls. My week in the Duel World, I would say my experience with this April 2020 Kaiba Cup was generally a success. 69 games played, 57% win rate, which is just 1% off my regular 58%, which Kaiba Cup typically brings it down a bit. I think the last one, where I was super frustrated, I had a 52%, something really low. So, just being one off is pretty cool. And, I used Baggy Sleeves Monarchs, and this is a deck that you had to have with the Lightsworn engine. You had to have Erebus, 2 copies of Erebus at least. And otherwise, it's a very cheap deck. Synchro cards, you only need 1 of each, so pretty easy to build this deck. Very fun deck. It played around graveyards. No Mortal Can Resist. I think No Mortal Can Resist becomes a theme here in that it's clearly the best skill after the Sealed Tombs nerf, so of course the Nishizu skill is really good. It kind of became playing around that card. So Monarchs do that in some ways. I mean, occasionally you get hit, you lose your Raidens and your Plague Spreaders in the graveyard. You lose those. Sometimes they turn into skulls, but having the Monarchs being trap monsters in the graveyard helps play around that skill a little bit. And the ability to get multiple synchro plays off in a turn very easily was a strength of the deck. Crystron Quadrant Gandrix, getting that off easily in 1 turn was big for the deck. So that 57% win rate through 69 games placed me in like 8,900 something, so I was top 9,000 global. And this became my deck of choice. Now I have a deck to play, which is good because I was struggling without a deck. And I used this deck to get to Legend yesterday, so I'm going to keep playing this deck. There's definitely enough time to hit King of Games. It's just motivation's always a limiting factor for me in getting that win streak on, but we'll see how far I get this month. Let's talk about esports this week. Kaiba Cup, April 2020, what we're talking about. Main topic this week. Top 10 decks. They have the top 100 in the Duel Links Meta website. Not every one of the 100 reported, but they actually have all of the top 10, which is pretty cool to get everyone to collaborate their decks into this thing. First place, Ma. I don't know if this is his real name, but I followed him on Twitter, so see, he's a Japanese player. Let me see what his Twitter's handle is so I could try to shout it out to everyone. It is Ma. So he MAA, and he's on the Claw Clan team in Japan, so he's part of a team. Grit Heroes, and there's nothing fancy about this deck at all. The only thing fancy about it is 21 cards, and that's because he puts 2 plasmas in. Almost every deck you've seen in the American scene runs 1 plasma. 1, if any, sometimes 0 plasmas. And you've got the same setup of monsters: 3 Vision Hero Ferris, 3 Elemental Hero Stratus, 2 Destiny Hero Malicious, 2 Vision Hero Increase, 1 Destiny Hero Celestial, 2 Vision Hero Vion. So that's, I mean, the numbers are a little off. Sometimes people run 1 Increase, 2 Ferris. It depends. But the 2 Plasma is definitely, I think, a consistency thing to get more Plasmas into the deck. 3 Mass Change, 1 Polymerization, and 2 Hey True Nades. That's it. It's a very simple deck. And this is what you get top placement in the Kaiba Cup with. 3 in the extra deck: 3 Master Hero Anki, 1 Blast, 1 Vision Hero Adoration, and 1 Vision Hero Trinity. Second place, Sunri Santi. This guy he's one of the top players in the Middle East region or African region. I think he's from Iraq, but I think he's made it to Worlds before. Grit Heroes as well. This is also a 21 card deck, but a little bit different. More heavy on the fusion support. And there's also a form change in this deck. So there's a form change that lets you play Master Hero Diane. You turn Anki into Diane. There's a 1-1 split Econ and Treacherous Trap Hole instead of the Hey True Nade. Got the same monsters: 2 Ferris, 3 Stratus, 2 Malicious, 2 Increase, 1 Celestial, 2 Vion, and 1 Plasma. Third place, Crucius, Destiny Draw, Invoked Elementsabers. This one's a very notable deck. 30 card deck here. We've seen 30 card decks. We've seen 25. This is 30. You've got your regular Invoked, 3 Alistair, 2 Invocation, and 3 of the Field Spell. You got 3 Malehus, full toolbox here: 1 Lapoya, 1 Malo, 1 Nalu, and 1 Aina for the Earth attribute. 1 Concentrating Current. And then the trap cards: 3 Fiendish Chain, 3 Floodgate, 3 Void Trap Hole, 2 Wolf D. Those are fairly typical. Now, Void Trap Hole is kind of the meta card to use. And then there's this really bad card: 3 copies of a Pointer of the Red Lotus. This is a card that went around in these decks. And if it's not known for its artwork, you see this card a lot in its suicide decks. You pay 2,000 life points, reveal all the cards in your hand, look at your opponent's hand, select 1 card, remove that card from play until the end phase of your opponent's next turn. So this is a really bad card that they've just found use here. Destiny Draw, right? So you have to lose 2,000 life points. The deck doesn't run Mirror Wall. No Concentrating Current, obviously, so this is how you lose your 2,000. Now you reveal all the cards in your hand. I guess they know you're playing Elementsabers. There's no surprise what you're doing, so I guess that's what it is. Lose 2,000, triggered your Destiny Draw. Now, this knocks out a card in your opponent's hand. This could be a few things. Sphere Karibos, it could be Kiteroids, it could be Artifact Lancia. So there's typically those 3 cards you would use to negate a hand trick in your opponent's hand. Sometimes a Chaos Hunter, I guess. This also helps lower your life points to play around No Mortal Can Resist. I said a lot of play revolved around that 1 duel skill, and this is one of the ones that do. So No Mortal Can Resist, they have to have lower life points than you, so you kind of just use this to get lower than them. There it is. 4th place, Chris, Baggy Sleeves, Thunder Dragons. This is a very typical deck that you see if you see in these tournament winners. So Thunder Dragon cards: 3 Thunderhawk, Thunder Dragon Hawk, 2 Dragon Dark, 1 Duo, 2 Dragon Roar. That's it. 3 Chaos Dragon Levianeer, 3 Vajra, 1 Glow Up Bulb, 3 Sphere Karibos, 3 Gold Sarcophagus, Melody of Awakening Dragon, 2 Econ, and then the Lightsworn Engine, 3 Raidens, and 3 Charge. 5th place, Red Y, Mythic Depths, Water Crystron. So this is a new deck that came out of the Kaiba Cup. Instead of playing regular 30-card Crystrons, they threw in the old Sea Stealth Whale package. So you got 3 Genex Undyne, 1 Citadel Whale, 2 Genex Controller, and 2 Sea Stealth Attack. we saw old decks just completely based off that archetype, and now they've kind of merged them together. When you're playing Crystron, you usually play Transcendent Crystals. This lets you have those Crystal Beasts in the deck, and it gives you ways to dump cards into the graveyard automatically. This is the same thing. Genex Undyne, when you normal summon it, you send a water monster from your deck to the graveyard, add a Genex controller. So not only are you getting a tuner, you're also dumping your Crystron monsters into the graveyard, which is what they all want. So, of course, Citadel Whale and Sea Stealth was always a tricky thing play around. Now it's not as good as it used to be, but still banishing or destroying things every turn. I haven't played against Sea Stealth in so long, I forgot what it does. Oh, so you banish your own thing for a turn and then you destroy something. That's kind of what it does. Sea Stealth was so good. 6th place, Chakla, Harpy's Hunting Ground, Blackwings. This is the notable Blackwing decks to place in the top 10. 2 copies of the same deck with the same skill, but slightly different. Both decks have 3 Simoon, 2 Bora, 1 Zephyros, 2 Gale, 1 Panaki, 3 Chris, 1 Orochi, 3 Black Whirlwinds, and then the Necro Valley. 1 deck runs Ballista Squad and 2 Blackbird Clothes. 1 deck runs 3 Cosmic Cyclones. 7th place, Kim Sit Marks. No Mortal Can Resist Ritual Beasts. Ritual Beasts are just like a really good deck. They do a million things a turn. The value of their monsters comes in defusing themselves. When they try to banish you, they try to effect destroy you, they try to attack you, you could just defuse, escape danger, keep doing it. Pretty much just draw them out of the game. Not much to say about this deck. It does run Herald of the Abyss to help your No Mortal Can Resist, 2 Cosmic Cyclones, otherwise a very typical Ritual Beast deck. Gotcha, 8th place. 2 decks here, Grit, Thunder Dragons. This is just a 23 card deck. Not much to say about it. It's very lean. 3 Chaos Dragon Levineers, not much of a Thunder Dragon package, but not much of those accessory monsters either. And then also Destiny Draw, Elementsaber, Invoked. This is just a 20 card deck. No Pointer of the Red Lotus here. Cuts out a lot of the control traps. Just 3 Fiendish Chain, which is enough. 1 Floodgate, 1 Void Trap Hole, and 1 Fusion Reserve. 9th place, IPU Lynx, Destiny Draw, Elementsaber, Invoked. This is also a version with the Pointer of the Red Lotus, 25 card version. Runs a little bit of everything. 3 Sphere Kribos, 2 Fusion Reserves, 1 Pointer, otherwise very similar Elementsaber deck. And 10th place, Fetty Guap Grit, Thunder Dragons. This one's notable. It does have Raiden. It doesn't run 3 Raidens, it runs 1 Raiden and 2 Raikos. Raiko, you do dispose 3, but it's off a flip effect, so it doesn't always activate. If they effect remove you, no flip effect, obviously. It does have more hard removal than Raiden, though. It's not a tuner, there's different pros and cons to it. Alright, so let's move on. Let's do it in chronological order. So Battle Phase 49 happened first. First place, ASAP, Mythic Depths, Water, Crystron's. We saw decks that came from the Kaiba Cup that did pretty well. We see Imitators, sort of. So here it is. Show up in the weekly tournament. I'll just say this. People usually do have the Citadel LC stuff by now, so they just throw it into Crystron's, and it's a better version. Second place, Nas, 230, Baggy Sleeves, Thunder Dragons. Doesn't have a Lightsworn engine. This one's interesting. There's no Lightsworn engine at all. There's 3 gold sarcophagus. Not much else. 2 Econ. I guess that's kind of disposal. Top 4, Yusef times 1, Destiny Draw, Invoked Elementsabers. This is kind of what like a deck, when they first nerfed Cosmic Cyclone, you would expect the deck to look like. They had you tried to think of ways to get rid of spells. So there's one Galaxy Cyclone, one Night Beam, kind of play around those things to get rid of spells. I mean, I don't know what to say. 2 Mirror Walls to help the Destiny draw. Your typical control spells, traps here. Top 4, what? No mortal can resist Dark Magician. Very old school Dark Magician with the 2 banished cards, Kaiku and Knight and Sorcerer. Otherwise, not much to say about this deck. And finally, Duel Links Meta Weekly 120. Drizzles with no mortal can resist Dark Magician. A new Dark Magician deck has come. And this is all about no mortal can resist. So, decks are building around the skill to allow activation for it. There's no Magician of Dark Illusions deck. There are 2 copies of Dark Magic Curtain. Now lets you lose half your life points. It doesn't matter what your life points are, you lose half of it. So that special summons a Dark Magician from the deck. And this helps, this works with Dark Magic Circle, it works with Magician's Navigation, and, you're lowering your life points so you could activate no mortal can resist and win the game. That's just what it is. It's playing around a dual skill. And it might be getting to the point where they have to nerf no mortal can resist as well, because decks are just completely getting to that point. And it might be burn decks might become meta because they're just burning their life points down for no mortal can resist. So we're getting to a point where burn decks can become dangerous, I think. It's kind of scary. Second place, Psycho P, no mortal can resist Dark Magician. Again, this is a bit of the older version of the build with Magician of Dark Illusion and no curtains. Void Trap Hole, that's pretty meta card. Top 4, Tenma, no mortal can resist Shiranui. Again, 20 card Shiranui, a lot of counterplay in this deck. Ballista Squad's a pretty staple card in the deck. Artifact Lancia is pretty good card to plug in as well. Void Trap Hole as well. And Edu 16 Transcendent Crystals Crystron's regular Crystron deck, running 2 copies of Artifact Lancia. So just based on these decks, we know what cards are good for the meta. Void Trap Hole is definitely a good card you could put in. I actually put it into my Monarchs deck, which doesn't make much sense because Monarchs typically make use of cards in the graveyard. So if you're not really a graveyard card, you don't really belong in Monarchs. But I put 2 copies of Void Trap Hole in, and it just won me some games. I mean, it hurts my consistency overall, but 24 card deck versus 26, I just let it slide, and it's doing okay so far. An Artifact Lancia, of course, pretty good card. Tier list update. After the Kaiba Cup, Tier 1, we have Elementsabers, Shiranui, and Thunder Dragons are in. Tier 1 deck officially. Nice to see a Lightsworn deck, engine deck get in there. Tier 2, Crystron's, Dark Magicians, and Masked Heroes have gone up. Of course, the top 2 decks in the Kaiba Cup were hero decks. I don't know if you should call them Masked Heroes anymore. They're just like all the heroes together, unified. Not just the Masked Heroes. Tier 3, we have Black Wings, Blue Eyes, and Cyber Dragon. Blue Eyes have fallen. Yeah, I feel like I'm beating Blue Eyes more than ever on the ladder. Like, they're not what they used to be. It seems something's up. And Dark Lords have moved off the tier list. I have to say, I didn't see a single Dark Lord deck in my 69 games in the Kaiba Cup Stage 2 or in Stage 1. I did not see one. They deserve to be off the list. Alright, let's move on to the Tag Duel Tournament. And I have to say that I messed up in this tournament. Because I've played every single Tag Duel Tournament, I have all the cards except for the 2 new ones. And I was scared I wasn't going to get my Wandering King Wildwind, so I spent 300 stones on it. And then I have an F4 now, so I would have gotten my Prismatic one by now. Oh yeah, that's the difference. This is the first tournament that lets you upgrade to a Glossy and then a Prismatic. So you pay more stones. It's fine because it incentivizes you to play more events, which is good if you want to grind gems. It motivates you to grind gems. So you just do it mindlessly. In this quarantine that we're in, might as well do it, right? So, yeah, and today they just threw in Pegasus and Nick, which throws in 250 extra coins, I believe. So, yeah, it's a pretty decent event. I don't mind it at all. Yeah, and the cards are good too. Let's talk about the cards. Wandering King Wildwind, level 4 Dark Fiend, 1700, 1300, level 4. If you control a Fiend Tuner with 1500 or less attack, you can special summon this card from your hand. If you attempt this, you cannot special summon monsters from the extra deck for the rest of the turn, except for synchro monsters. During your main phase, except the turn this was sent to the graveyard, you can banish this card from your graveyard, add a Fiend Tuner with 1500 or less attack from your deck to your hand. So this is a Jack Atlas card. And Jack Atlas has like a Resonator synergy and that red cards like Red Dragon Archfiend. So this card specifically is a Jack Atlas card and works with Fiend Tuners like the Resonators. Now the thing about the Resonators is some of them have seen play if they're good enough, but generally they have not been used. And Resonators are interesting in that they have levels 1, 2, and 3, I think. There's a number of Resonators in the deck. A lot of them were released in the last box. And they're all cheap, typically. So, in theory, Wandering King Wildwind works great with these Resonators. Kind of like a Psychic Tracker. They think about the Tuner as Psychic Wheel Dealer. This is like Psychic Tracker. The piece that comes on for free. The non-tuner piece. Because they're 1 to 3 and this is just a 4, this is a new Synchro Toolbox. You can make anything from 5 to 7. I think it's pretty cool. Some of the Resonators have other effects that help the monsters afterwards, I think. I'm not really sure. I don't know much about the Resonators. I played Clock Resonator a little bit in my Invoke deck. But this is a new Synchro Toolbox. Comes out for free. And then there's a second ability when it's the next turn, you can just tutor another Resonator out. So this is a pretty good card for what it is. I don't know if it'll see play, but it allows a new Synchro Toolbox other than the Akiza one, because the Akiza one is vulnerable for getting Dark Verger punched out of the deck. If there's so many things that counter the graveyard now, like No Mortal Can Resist. If she does that, you lose the game because you lose your Dark Verger. So this plays around that. Of course, you need this guy in your hand, which is a little worse than having a card in the graveyard, but comes out for free, which is nice. Next card is Gaia Drake, the Universal Force, level 10 Earth Beast Warrior. It requires a fusion of Gaia Knight, the Force of Earth, and a non-effect Synchro Monster, 3500, 2800. This card cannot be targeted by or destroyed by the effects of effect monsters. So, the ability is great. No targets. We saw this with Archfiend's Call in the Synchro Toolbox deck. And also some of the Lunalight monsters can't be targeted, so anti-target is great. But then even better yet, cannot be destroyed by the effects of effect monsters. So, Black Rose Dragon cannot wipe this off the board. That's pretty much the biggest one. And it's just effect monsters, it's not spells or traps. So Treacherous Trap Hole can hit this. But that's really the only one. Karma Cut, I guess. Dimensional Prison, anything like that. Any of those removal traps can hit this card. But spells typically don't destroy stuff. Herald of the Abyss works, I guess. But no effect destruction from effect monsters. Now to get this on the board, this requires the fusion of 2 Synchro monsters. That's a lot of work. Gaia Knight's at level 6, that's like a beater, 2600, and then a non-effect Synchro Monster. That could be anyone. So it's a lot of work, right? 2 Synchro Monsters. That will be 2 Synchros and a Polymerization. I don't think there's a way that will ever fly. You can use, we saw this with Dark Paladin, not Dark Paladin. Dark Cavalry. Dark Cavalry uses some of those fusion material monsters sometimes, like Hex. So this is like Dark Hex Sealed Fusion works for that. This would be Earth Hex Sealed Fusion. You won't have to run Polymerization either. So you would need one Synchro Monster and then Earth Hex Sealed Fusion to substitute for Gaia Force of Earth. You could do that. Probably the best way to do this is with Summoner of Illusions. That's a flip effect monster that lets you get a fusion card out of your extra deck, and then you destroy it at the end of the turn. The thing is, this card protects itself from getting destroyed by that effect. So, in a way, that's how you cheat out this monster. Now, there is some setup, though. You need to protect your Summoner of Illusions for one turn so he doesn't get flipped face up. And then you have to have a monster to tribute for it. So you tribute your new monster, I guess. And then you get it, Gaia Drake, the Force of Earth. So, this guy is a pretty big beater. 3,500 will hit over anything that's over 3,000. Your Blue Eyes meta right now. Like I said, the removal trap cards work against him, and also non-target banish works against him. So Herald of the Abyss works. That's not a banish, but that's a removal. Fortune Lady Every, I meant. Fortune Lady Every can banish this card. But let's say Michael, the Lightsworn, can't banish this because he can't target. So certain cards will work. Most of them will not work against him, like Black Rose Dragon, like I mentioned. So if this could work, it's pretty strong. Then you throw in like Power of the Guardians in. Pretty good. I'm excited to see if this... I bet there's some like busted ass deck that comes out with Summoner of Illusions or Earth Hex Sealed Fusion that just blows you away. But the setup is a bit much, I think. That plays against this card's favor. Next up are two new cards from the card trader this week. And this is very, very exciting to me because this quietly brings in a whole new mechanic into dueling. And frankly, this was something that I wasn't even aware of that existed in the game. And that is positioning. And I was aware of Link Monsters and what they do. And Link Monsters sort of have to do with positioning because their arrows point in certain ways. Kind of like... if you ever played Final Fantasy 8 or 9, they had those card games like Tetra, whatever, and the arrows point in certain directions. That's kind of what Link Monsters do. Their arrows point in certain directions. This isn't exactly the same, but this plays around columns, what columns cards are in. Traditional card game, in TCG Yu-Gi-Oh, there's 5 columns, and your monster zone and your spell zones are rows, so there's 5 columns. Duel Links, there's only 3 columns, so it's a little more simple. And let's talk about what the cards do and talk about the implications of these two new cards. One a lot more than the other. Mech Knight Green Horizon. This will cost you your SR stones. Light Psychic level 6, 2100, 1600. If 2 or more cards are in the same column, you can special summon this card from your hand into that column. You can only special summon Mech Knight Green Horizon once per turn this way. When an attack is declared, involve this card and an opponent's monster in this card's column. You can target one Mech Knight monster in your graveyard, add it to your hand. So, all you need is 2 cards in the same column. There's a few situations this could work. Easiest way is your opponent goes first. They play a monster and a spell or trap set, end their turn. That's 2 cards in a column. You could special summon this the next turn into that middle column. Alternatively, they could cheat out 2 monsters, play 2 sets, and then you could cheat out Mech Knight Green Horizon in the first column or the second column, the middle one or the left column. When we're talking about this stuff, it's kind of tricky because you can't control... Normally, before this card came out, you can't control where you put your cards. You start off with the middle column, you go to the left, and then if you play a third card, you play it on the right column. So this card will come out on like the first or second column typically. The middle or left column. Also, you could have one set card yourself and your opponent could have a set card and the monster, and then you could play this card. So there's a few different ways this could come out, and this could come into any of the 3 columns. Mostly the middle column, because that's just how cards go. They automatically go to the middle column. Now, when this card battles a monster in the same column, the arrows are pointing in this, straight forward. You could recycle another Mech Knight in the graveyard. This is not really a special ability because we don't have too many Mech Knights. I think there's like some vanilla Mech Knight. I feel like there is from the last box, but I'm not sure. But no special one that could be really used. But what it is it's a free special summon on a 2100 6 stars. We already have Cyber Dragon and Oracle of the Sun. They're both 2100 guys that could come out for free as well. A much easier way of doing it, because this requires your opponent to have a monster and a spell, whereas if they just have a monster, you can get your Cyber Dragon out. But this is 6 stars, so it's free 6 stars. You can think about tuning with this card too, so there's a chance this card could be useful. Against Blue Eyes, this is very unlikely. Usually they just set the dragon, the stone of ancients, or whatever it's called, ancient dragon of white, and they pass. So against Blue Eyes, this is not very effective. Against most decks, they usually have a set and a monster. So yeah, interesting card. But the problem, of course, is that you can't really control where monsters go. So there's one card here that controls where it goes, but then every other card doesn't. So if more and more of these cards are released, I don't think there's going to be a ton of these, because it doesn't seem like it's the most important mechanic given our limited space, but it is something. Next card's a lot less interesting. Rampaging Rhinos, level 3. This is your rare card. Beast Warrior, level 3, 15/15. Once per turn, this card can move to an adjacent horizontal unoccupied monster card zone. If this card attacks the monster in its same column, it gains 500 attack during the damage step. So normally just a 1500, situationally, if there's a monster across from it, becomes 2000. Okay. There's some column synergy, like I could move to another column and hit someone else, sure, but it's a little outdated to be useful. I guess it's cool for being able to move columns once per turn. You could pick where it goes, and that's something, but the ability itself is lackluster. The card is lackluster. Not much to say about Rampaging Rhinos other than it moves side to side. So, 2 new cards focused on positioning, and I'm excited to see where this goes. This is very interesting. So we have another new card from Duel Quest, and this is a card we're getting 3 copies of, but ultimately it's a pretty bad card. Amazoness Arena, Field Spell. When this card is activated, increase the life points of both players by 600. Each time a player declares an attack with a monster, they can pay 100 life points to inflict 100 points of damage to the opponent's life points at the end of the damage step. That's it. There really isn't a point in this card. It has nothing to do with Amazoness at all, besides the name. There's an Amazoness and a Nightmare Steel Cage. Gain 600, inflict 100, pay 100 to inflict 100. Yeah, it sucks. There's nothing to say about this card. The next card is a card we're getting a second copy of. I really don't know where we got the first one from, because I don't even remember this card at all, but Hydro Pressure Cannon, Equip Spell. Equipped to a level 3 or lower water monster. If it destroys an opponent's monster by battle, send one random card in your opponent's hand to the graveyard. Okay, Hand Disruption seems to be fairly meta now. We could do it with Pointer of the Red Lotus. I guess that's a card that could do it. I do it with the Monarch too. Airburst the Monarch and punch a card out of the opponent's hand. This could be a little meta with certain water monsters, like Crystons could be level 3 or lower, but normally you're not attacking with them, so it's not too relevant. Monsters like Atlanteans and Aqua Actresses, they're kind of bigger, higher attack level 3 monsters, could make some use out of this, but those cards aren't really meta either. Usually there's a water monster somewhere. It's like they're level 4, like Chocolate Magician's a water, Oxidus is a water. Um, Nalu's level 4, I think. Elementsaber Nalu. So it's not like those cards are being used to attack nowadays. So it's hard to say whether this probably won't see any play. I guess it's a safe bet here. All right, so those are all the cards this week. Doug Dimmaduel is here. Last week I skipped him by accident, so apologies to Doug for that. But this is a fairly competitive deck, and it's a new way to play. It's not a new way, but it's a different way to play Invoked decks if you have the cards. And that's with the Magician Girls. So, these are chocolate, baby, apple. Those are the best ones. There are other ones like lemon and kiwi, but those are the best ones. This is a fairly competitive deck too, so you could try this on your run to King of Games. Definitely a new way to play it other than the Elementsabers, something a little more unexpected for the opponent to play around against. So here's Doug's casual deck of the week with the Invoked Magician Girls.
Hey there, this is Doug Dimmaduel with Doug's Casual Deck of the Week. So this week we're going to roll with an Invoked deck because everybody loves Invoked. It's just everybody's favorite archetype. So with the recent nerfs and everything to Sorcerer's Conduit and all that fun stuff, I thought we'd go with something a little bit different, maybe some Destiny draw action using Yugioh, because we could still run our 3 copies of Cosmic Cyclone with Invokes, unless we're using the whole Elementsaber engine, because that field spell is really darn good. So to switch things up and kind of keep with the spellcaster theme, I thought we would kind of revisit the Magician Girl archetype. So, they're all the different type of, attributes. We have some water, we have some earth, and we have some fire. So Apple Magician Girl is fire, Berry Magician Girl is earth, and Chocolate Magician Girl is water. So that allows us to get into all of our fusion plays. And then, of course, we also have our Invoked Kaliga, which is a dark monster. So really the structure of the deck is to, if you can, get your 3 copies of Alistair the Invoker, level 4 spellcaster, 1000 attack, 1800 defense. During either player's turn, you can send this card from your hand to the graveyard, and then target 1 fusion monster you control, and it gains 1000 attack and defense until the end of this turn. Also, if this card is flipped face up, you could add 1 invocation from your deck to your hand, and also upon normal summon, you can get your invocation to your hand. So I run my 2 copies of invocation. I really don't see any Invoke deck that needs more than 2 copies of Invocation. You may just need 1 copy in some cases, but in case your opponent banishes it or something like that, it's good to always have a second one in the deck, but you really don't want to open with this spell card. So having 2, it may clunk into your hand every now and again when you open with 2 copies of it, of course. When you open with it, it's because that's just the nature of Duel Links. The card that you really don't want, you usually open with. That's just the way it is. I do run my 3 copies of Cosmic Cyclone to help further advance the reduction in life points to trigger Destiny Draw as soon as possible. And then I like to have 1 copy of Concentrating Current because it is such a lethal combo with your Invoked Purgatrio, because that is, it does piercing. It gains another 200 attack points for each card your opponent controls. I mean, it's really the OTK if you could combo it out with Concentrating Current. So that only leaves you with an opportunity to put 1 Invoked Magellanica into your extra deck, which is just the plain fusion, 3000 attack, 3300 defense, Earth Invoked monster. And then, of course, your 1 copy of Invoked Casitas, the level 6, water, 2900 defense, can attack from defense position, can't be targeted or destroyed, that whole deal. So, overall, I mean, that's really how your extra deck's going to be laid out. So I do run just a full 3 copies of Purgatrio. Not that you really need it, but it's there. So what are the Magician Girls that I'm running in this deck? I run 2 copies of Chocolate Magician Girl, 2 copies of Apple Magician Girl, and 3 copies of Berry Magician Girl. Berry Magician Girl is the one that can search things out upon summon, and when it's attacked or when it's targeted for destruction, it could also special summon another Magician Girl from the deck. So this will allow you to get whichever pieces that you want to get into the invoked play that you're trying to get into. So Berry Magician Girl is probably one of the underrated cards of this archetype. It is really well worth it and really allows you to get into those invoked plays very easily. Then I run my 2 copies of Floodgate Trap Hole. I don't know, maybe you could splash in a third. Doesn't matter. Everybody hates that trap right now, but it is too darn effective. And flipping monsters face down, keeping monsters face down on the field for ultimately your invoked Purgatrio play. That's it. I mean, that's the ball game right there. Now, as for what additional spell I want to run, I'm thinking Wonder Wand. It is an equipped spell. You can only equip it to spellcasters. This entire deck is made up of spellcasters, so it's great. It gains 500 attack. If you control the equipped monster and this card, you can send both to the graveyard to draw 2 cards. So this allows you to get through your deck quicker and hopefully get all of the pieces for your fusion play. So an ideal play would be summoning Alistair the Invoker to search out your invocation, then equipping your Wonder Wand to the Alistair, and then sending those 2 cards to the graveyard, draw 2 cards, hopefully get one of the Magician Girls that you are trying to get for your fusion play, and then go into your fusion, then shuffle your invocation back into the deck to add your Alistair back to your hand. So it is a very, very effective combo. It's pretty efficient, and with Destiny Draw, if your back's against the wall and you really just need one specific component, maybe you need a Cosmic Cyclone, maybe you need a Floodgate Trap Hole, maybe you need your Alistair. This will allow you to get into whatever plays you need. I like Destiny Draw. It's still one of my favorite skills. So, and if you don't remember what Destiny Draw does, if your life points decrease by 2,000 points during your draw phase, instead of conducting your normal draw, you draw a card of your choice once per duel. There was a point where this skill was absolutely busted to the point where anytime you reduce your life points by 2,000 points, you could draw whatever card you want. So people would be fluctuating their life points, go down 2,000, go up 2,000 or 3,000. They would be finding new cards to recover those life points, and it was just highly abused. So once per duel, Destiny Draw. Pick whatever card you need to go for that next turn OTK. Search out the Concentrating Current because you only need to run that 1 copy in your deck. And, I'm telling you, this is so worth it. This is an excellent, excellent deck. So, yeah, give it a shot. That's it for my casual deck of the week. I will see you next time. Take care.
All right, thanks, Doug. And you can check out his decks on this podcast every week, and also his own Twitter account, Yu-Gi-Oh! Deck Talk. Wrapping up this quick episode with upcoming news. Memories of a Friend is coming on the 21st, so that's Tuesday, I believe. It's time to finish up this event. Mission Circuit Chain Close, new card, and also Duelist Chronicles 5Ds is expected with Majestic Star Dragon. We should be getting our new news by this time next week, so, and of course all of that is affected by COVID, so I don't know if anything was shelved, anything was planned for that, but, yeah, I think this was our first month where we didn't have a legendary duelist acquisition. I forget when Carly was. I feel like she was late last month, but things have been a bit of a blur lately with what's been going on in the world. But I don't know if we're expecting less news in the future. With they're probably limiting the work staff at Konami, so what is to come. We don't know if it's gonna be less or more of the same stuff. I know they are planning for that substitute tournament for WCS, and that's supposed to begin from June to August, I believe. Though that's whatever that substitute event is. But yeah, we're just not much to do right now. If you hit King of Games already, there's not much to do. Maybe it's time to play a new deck. There's no new cards to come out now, so you're playing your own deck. I personally will be playing some games to try to hit King of Games. If it's not for those 200 gems, I'm building on my gems. I'm almost at 7,000 now, so I'm getting ready to finally fill up my reserves, which is great. I'm gonna try to max out this event as much as I could. This auto duel event. Get my prismatic Wandering King Wild win or something. Of course, I'm not gonna go super hard at King of Games. I still have over a week, maybe 2 weeks. Yeah, just about a week and 5 days to try to hit King of Games. So we'll see. We'll see how far I get. I really do enjoy playing my Monarch deck, so I'll keep plugging along. So that is it for the podcast this week. Thank you very much, everyone, for sticking around. Listen and subscribe to this podcast anywhere. Just search the Duel Assessment. Check out these notes at theduelassessment.wordpress.com. Email me with any questions at theduelassessment@gmail.com. Or find me on Twitter. Interact with me. Duel_assessment. My own account at Green Ranger CCG. All right. Take care, everyone, and I will see you next time.